want to lose and to pretend she's overboard and self-assured. No, self-assured.
I'm back. I'm back. Welcome to Susty Talks. Today I am going to be talking about grunge glam, which is basically when you dress really fancy but you got no money. So sorry for being away. If you're a follower of the podcast, you know that I'm supposed to be doing these every week, but I recently got 2 minimum wage jobs and they're killing my soul. They're not paying enough for killing my soul. But today I do want to get into grunge glam. I love grunge. I love glamming up. I have the perfect combination today. Got the death skull with the sports vibes, even though I'm not sporty. And then this flower jacket. It's such a interesting combination of like sweet and like sour, you can say. But yeah, I love grunge glam too because it's such a cool intersection with music, with fashion, and basically with anti-establishment ideas. So yes, I'm super excited because as a kid I lived grunge glam. I was a 2000s kid. I was born in 1998. My childhood was the early 2000s, and I want to go back to the time when the teens, when the adults were really just wearing whatever they wanted. I remember my neighbor. She was so cool. She was the ultimate definition of the glam girl, of just dressing up however she wanted. But sometimes she dressed like she was in a punk rock band. Sometimes she dressed emo. Sometimes she dressed in her Y2K fits. It was such a beautiful time to see her. She was honestly like the baddie of the block. But I think everyone was kind of doing the same thing she was doing in the early 2000s. She was just doing what she wanted. She wasn't following trends. She wasn't worrying about being polished or following these standards. She wasn't copying Pinterest. Did Pinterest even exist in the early 2000s? I don't even know. And there was certainly no TikTok feeds to ruin our brain. And the thing is, I feel like a lot of people had a more fulfilling life back when cell phones weren't such a huge thing. They did have the flip phones, obviously, but like I think social media can connect us in a certain way, but I think it's distorted our sense of image, who we are, and just how we function in the world. And so I feel like we're almost forcing ourselves to find what's authentic. Like most of the times when we want to follow an influencer, we're like, oh, well, they're unique and they're authentic, but like, what does that really mean? And then when you're trying to be successful as an influencer, the key word now is to be authentic. But I feel like we're all just trying to get back to a time where the algorithm didn't rule our life, where we were just unapologetically ourselves, and where we weren't so influenced by just media in general. So I think anti-establishment ideologies is really important to explore within the work that I do, because it really was a foundational piece for past baddies who loved music and still cared about the world, who still, tried to do things in a unique way. And maybe it was just to say F you to society. Sometimes it was to actually like genuinely show up for others. So we're going to be exploring that in this podcast. But I also want to talk about the power of music. I love music. I feel like a lot of people are concerned about the music industry, especially with Spotify being so concerning with their political ties and just the amount of money they charge to be a middleman and just giving you curated playlists is crazy. Why am I paying $12? Why am I paying $12 for an app, a company, to curate music for me? They don't even own the music. So I quit my Spotify plan. Yes, I was on the premium plan. And now I'm like, well, I'll go on YouTube. I'll discover music somehow. It's just we've convenienced ourselves so much to the point that we're not even trying to discover music on our own. And back in the early 2000s, we were forced to discover things. And I feel like it could lead us to really like underground, like local bands. So I'm like desiring that. I want to learn who are the underground indie bands in Chicago, who are the ones that are gonna like bring me to a random basement. Okay, that sounds creepy. you know what I mean, like bring me to a random basement for a concert. You know, those are the moments I feel like is life. The moments that we're gonna remember, not the playlist on Spotify. So yeah, I also feel like when I talk about grunge, the reason why it's so important to me is because it's made me feel a certain way. You know, something that just kind of makes you feel something. That's what music has done. That's what grunge glam specifically has done for me. It has allowed me to live my life a bit more differently than our current society that's just very chaotic. And I feel like it has, yeah, like really heavily shaped my style. And it all roots back to my desire to be myself, which is crazy. It sounds so corny. I don't know. Like, I want to do a challenge where I don't have my phone for like a month, where I don't watch YouTube for a month. I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of nostalgic nowadays because there was so much opportunity to connect with people in real life back then. And now I feel like we're constantly online. We're constantly on social media, constantly watching stuff. And I think for myself, I just need to unplug. Maybe this is a call for help where I just unplug and like turn off my phone, turn off YouTube, turn off everything, and just kind of like try to have real life experiences. I honestly moved back to Illinois when I was in my 27-year-old era, and I realized I didn't really know anyone. And it was scary not knowing how to make friends or where to find them or how to have a quote-unquote real experience. And I've stayed at home basically for a year just wondering, where am I going to find friends? And I feel like I'm not alone. I feel like a lot of people are experiencing this. They're wondering, how do I get those memories I'm going to remember for the rest of my life? And I think we just have to turn off the phone, which is the most ironic part because we usually say, let's go on our phone to find that social connection that's lacking in our real life. And I just can't help but reflect recently, like back in 2007, that's when I gained consciousness. That's when I was like becoming self-aware as a 10-year-old. And I feel like it was just a universal experience to like notice the outfits, notice how people were functioning, noticing the musicians. And I feel like that's where I want to head to. I want to emulate that joy, emulate that carefree energy that was back in the 2000s. And there's something really special about the constant exposure to the same song on the radio. Just hearing the same thing over and over again kind of is like the playlist of your life, quite literally. And I think that when you listen to music in the car, it's so different than listening to music on your phone. And you start to sing it, you start to, you know, enjoy it. You start to be like, okay, this is something I can put on when I'm cleaning, you know, my room. And I feel like that organic discovery of music is so special. That's like what makes us human. When it's random, when it's unexpected moment, it's not hyper curated. I hate this is such a niche topic. I know this podcast is such a niche like perspective, but it's just the nostalgia of like getting in a car and just listening to random music is so different than anything else I've experienced in a car trip. When people have a curated playlist and they're like, give me the aux and I want this song and I want that song, and then they skip through the music, it ruins it for me. I remember I was in Montana and we were like driving through this beautiful mountaintop, and the girl, my friend, was just skipping song after song after song after song after song after song after song. Like only 5 seconds would pass and she was already skipping through it, and it broke my spirit in a way. I was like, I just wanted to tell her, you're messing with my head. I don't think we're meant to have so much control where we're just like skipping through thing. It's just, we should just kind of let the moment play out. We should let the music play. Like if we don't like it, we'll just move on once it's over. It's just, I couldn't like concentrate quite literally in the moment because she was trying to control it so much. And I think grunge music for me is representative of a lot of different things. Like I was saying, it has influenced my life and it goes back to my childhood. But one of the things that it has heavily influenced is my anti-consumerist philosophy, which I think a lot of my audience resonates with. They you guys, I'm talking to you guys, sorry, you guys are the ones that care about sustainability, care about how you're consuming. And I think for me, all of this comes back to the roots of anti-establishment, of only really doing things that matter to you authentically. But like, that doesn't mean you can't care about others. And so anti-consumerism is not like anti-people or anti like, like everything. It's just, you don't have to buy every single thing that you need. You can trade with your friends, you can swap, you can, get a sewing machine and try to come up with it yourself, or just really wear the shirt that you love 100 times until it literally has holes. And I feel like that's the ultimate definition of grunge fashion. Wear things until it's literally falling apart, super dirty with holes. And I love it. And as like a 10 to like 14-year-old, that's when I had exposure of like grunge fashion specifically. There's so many icons. If you want me to deep dive into this topic, let me know. This is like generally just a surface level conversation. But I remember the grunge staples. There was the flannel tops. There was the ripped skinny jeans, the Doc Martens, the old vintage shirts that you had no idea what brand it was because it was just so worn out. They would also wear like their flannels around their waist. It was such a staple to like the grunge movement. Band tees were also a thing. What else? Huge knit sweaters when it was cold. And it actually kind of looked moth-eaten. So that was kind of, the vibe. And I loved how everyone could just look themselves, even if they were wearing like these grunge staples. And I don't know, I just fell in love with it. I started following the grunge stereotype. I started wearing the secondhand flannels, the oversized t-shirts, the ripped jeans, the band tees, like all of it I would wear. I remember in high school, like this was just my vibe. This just was my style. It helped me feel comfortable when I was incredibly socially anxious, when I didn't feel like I was worthy of like even having friends in general. I think a lot of people in real life would be surprised to discover that fact. And so music was my escape, and it allowed me to have like strength and confidence. And like dressing as a stereotype of like grunge felt like I was part of something. It felt like I was worthy of like the anti-establishment cause, because if I didn't feel like it fit into modern society, then at least I fit in an anti-society, if that makes sense. It's like the anti-social social club. Kind of makes no sense, but that's kind of how I felt as an emo teenager. And I just loved pop rock. I loved indie rock. I loved just like people that were going against the grain and doing their own thing. It showed me that this standardized box of living that we've been trained in public school could change, that we could move the needle, because I felt like I was like being molded like a clay figure into something that I was not, and it was suffocating. And I didn't even know what being neurodivergent was back in high school. So I didn't have the language to understand that my brain worked differently, that I was processing things differently, and that school is a system meant to make you conform. And so, music just became a total escape, a mental escape, when my external reality just wanted me to be a certain thing. And in college, I started to study fashion and business in the hopes of building my own space but still function in society, like have my own business and not have to work with anyone, not have to conform to anyone, not have to like fit something that everyone else wants me to be. Like corporate America to me seemed like a hellscape, and I knew if I wanted to be like quote unquote successful or have my own home or escape generational poverty, I needed something that honored my individuality. And it's so interesting because I feel like in college, that's when I started finding groups that were very like-minded, who were also dressing like me, who also had like the dark clothing and like the oversized tees that didn't look like they had showered in weeks, and like they had tattoos, they had piercings, they had boots, and like I knew they were like my people as soon as I saw them. There were this like specific group that I kept seeing in the cafeteria. They kept walking past, and I was like, oh my god, like I need to be their friend. But I didn't really meet them until later. But we would just kind of like stare at each other. It's so funny. We would just stare at each other. And then slowly I met a couple of them because they were in some classes like One of them was in a graphic design class, and then another one was like in an art class. Like they were very into like the artsy scene, and I was in a liberal arts college that was super small, so it was like really easy to like meet a lot of them. Like they came up to me. I was never a people person. I was never like super confident or super extroverted. I didn't want to introduce myself to, like, even though I really wanted to. But I kind of regret it because I wish I had talked to them sooner. I feel like it would have like made my experience so much more cooler. They were like very like-minded. I could tell they were like into alternative topics, like into comic books or into like rock music and all the fun grungy activities, if you know what I mean. But yeah, it is what it is. I kind of regret it. It is what it is. But yeah, in college, I highly recommend just meeting people. I think it's a really great time to just go outside of the experiences that you've had. For example, I was raised in a small suburban town in Illinois that has a lot of normies, but I did just go to like a normie liberal arts college. But like just seeing people from different areas and like different experiences was so illuminating, and it just made me realize that so many people are curating their identity and their experiences and their choices in life based on so many different things, but you can still find like meeting points of commonality. So the idea of anti-establishment was like a meeting point of commonality, which is sounds so ironic that to be anti-society you can find people in society that agree with you. But yeah, I think that when I started looking into more of the grungy scene, I started realizing that a lot of people just have the desire to be artists, to express themselves through music, to, you know, be artistic in the album covers, to just make noise in a place that maybe doesn't really have a space for you or a moment for you. I think we're all trying to fill up gaps in our life. So I don't know, I really love how bands just have the power to make us feel like we're not alone, and that it can, you know, give us joy and give us emotions. But anyways, I do want to say, like, if you can't afford college, that's totally okay. Like, you can always meet people of all different scenes. Like, a lot of the people in the grunge scene, like the OG grunge bands, they couldn't afford school. They were just doing their own thing. They were in dingy bands and their mom's basement. Like, they were underground artists. They were just people that really just wanted to express themselves. So I had the fortune of going to college and meeting different people through that. But like, no matter where you're at, I think the point is to just like push the constraints, express yourself, make art, and not just consume things blindly just because everyone else is doing it. And I think this is really relevant to the sustainable fashion lifestyle scene. I would say, like, grunge is such a great example of people straying away from what's popular, from what's trending, and just really just taking the time to be themselves. And that's created ripples. Like, the power of self-expression can create ripples. Even though other people can copy the look, like I did, I copied the grunge glam look, like, I think it can still allow us a path forward that no one else is teaching us. Because if you look at it, like the magazines, the videos, everything is telling us to buy this, to buy that, to look this way, or to make it that way, or you have to follow this to belong. But you know what's so interesting? I feel like some people believe these constraints or these toxic ideas so much of how you should function that they start to feel entitled to tell you how to look, how to act. And that annoys me so much. So for example, I had a friend group, and one girl in particular just always kept telling me to change how I did my hair and to change up my look. This is how I've looked since I've been like 18. I like my look. I like my straight brown hair. I like my makeup. I think I look decent and I feel comfortable, and I think that's what matters. If you feel authentically yourself, right? That's what we're talking about. But this girl didn't seem to sense that I was doing this on purpose. She thought I was like maybe stuck in some like mental prison, or was afraid of trying new things, or maybe she just felt uncomfortable that I didn't change it up because she was always changing it up. Like, she was constantly cutting her hair, constantly dyeing it. Like, her hair was damaged. Did I ever tell her anything about her poor hair? No, I never told her how bad her hair looked. But she had the audacity to tell me, cut your hair, change the way that it's, parted, do your makeup like this, you should try your eyeliner like this. And it wasn't like consensual advice. You know how when you have a really close friend and they make suggestions when you're like getting dressed together or when you're shopping together, it's just a suggestion. Oh, maybe you should try this, or maybe like do this. No, these comments kind of almost came out of nowhere. She would just come up to me every single time and make comments, whether it was in a party or in a club or like in a meeting, and she would just say things. And I love my style. I use grunge as a way to be myself. Like, that's the point, right? And a lot of people can't take it when you know who you are. I've never really tried to change for anyone, but I do try to please them. I try to I try to be agreeable, but then I guess my toxic trait is I don't follow through because I don't actually want to do it, so I just end up doing what I want to do. I gotta fix my people pleasing skills, but I'm always true to myself, basically, whether I like to admit it or not. But I want things to work out for me in the way that I want it to. I say that basically my destiny is me pushing it towards where I want it to be. I don't let things be up to luck or up to how the universe wants it to play out. I feel like I shape my reality, I shape my actions, I shape my destiny. And maybe there is some luck in there, maybe there is some quote unquote fate, but I feel like I'm curating my fate, my destiny, my path forward. And so when people are do this or look like this or dress like that, I'm like, where is this coming from? And the thing is, I was very independent as a child. I was never really told by my parents how to dress. My mom would put me in these beautiful little, dresses, and she would do my hair, but I just refused after a certain while. When I was 12 years old, I did not let her touch my hair. I started crying. I did tantrums. She would just get irritated and just give up, and I would just pull off the bows. I would pull off the things, and she eventually learned, stop messing with this girl. And she just let me be. She would leave me in the backyard to do my own thing for hours on end during the summer. She wasn't micromanaging me. She just would check I was actually in the backyard. And I appreciated that. I felt like someone was watching me, but still letting me do my own thing. And so that's kind of what I look for in life. I look for people who respect who I am, respect how I function, but still show some sense of support. I, again, am someone that wants to do it my way. So if you don't let me function my way, you're cut off in my life. And I think that's why I really want to move to Seattle, which that's a huge jump to say someone is worthy in my life because they leave me alone, and then jumping to Seattle is a huge jump in conversation. But Seattle is where grunge emerged. A lot of bands emerged there. They were just messing around in their garage. They were experimenting with music, experimenting with how to think about life and moving away from consumerism and capitalism. And I really want to go there. It's just I don't know, that's where my lore comes from. Sustainable Amor, this platform came from a series of changes, but the OG platform was called Eco Grunge. So combining environmental causes with this grunge movements or grunge space that I love so much. And I always just want to go back to that sense of grunginess and being yourself and being in spaces that really do respect you for who you are. And I feel in Seattle, a lot of people have been raised with the ethos of, DIY and alternative ideologies. So I feel I'll actually really fit in there. That's an assumption. Maybe I'll just find a bunch of granola girls and granola guys. To be truly honest, I feel this is a diary entry at this point. I do think that it's extremely empowering to find people that want to allow you or respect you enough to be yourself, to do whatever your heart desires, as long as it doesn't hurt anyone. I hate the judgment that I've experienced with people in the past. And I don't come from a good background of like supportive friends or supportive groups. So it's like a call to be like, where are those that actually accept the differences that we have in each other, especially in a very polarizing society where we're literally like killing each other because of how different we are. But I guess one of the main points I do also want to cover in this podcast is that fashion is something that we really should think about. Even if it feels dumb sometimes or not quote unquote deep, I do want to say that, again, grunge hit its peak in 1992 in Seattle, like I was mentioning. And it came out of nowhere. It was very unexpected, but people started to form groups, bands, and they connected punk ethics to self-production, to independence, to a anti-corporation ideology as well. And there were so many fusions of styles. Like, they would take inspiration not only from punk but from other, backgrounds, like soul, like whatever they could get their hands on, they were combining it together to make their own music. And I loved how they valued independence, how they had a very open opposition to corporate power structures and just like structures in general. And it's not to be like, oh, let's have a revolution and throw everything down. Like, no, these people are like making music, like they weren't destroying society. They were just trying to counteract it in some way. I have not like really seen anyone talk about this, but it's like rugged aesthetics. Like it's just a random hoodie, that's basically slept in. I literally slept in this hoodie, and then adding some sort of like elevated element, like this jacket, even though it's like fast fashion, it's a bit of an elevated thing. And it can also be like jewels, it can be your makeup, it can be your hair, whatever it is. It just creates a bit more of a feminine, like, I guess, light-hearted energy to the otherwise very rugged aesthetics. And I do want to mention that this has become a bit more popular with a lot of celebrities trying the grunge glam look. And I also feel like a lot of other brands are touching on this alternative ideology. So Depop, for example, has had a recent campaign called Where Tastes Recognize Taste. So basically the campaign focuses on the thrill of feeling seen when someone appreciates a seller's style by purchasing the item. And they explain that at the heart of the campaign is the idea of the Doppelganger, which is the theory that two people that are worlds apart can be brought together by a shared sense of style. And the campaign also explained that it was a celebration of an unexpected connection where shoppers and sellers aren't just transacting, they're vibing. So dare I say, I'm sure that they're adopting and reinterpreting trends, how we see fashion, how we see moments, how we see connection, and trying to make capitalism and materialism a bit more human. I just want to note, though, that we're always connected, whether we're buying clothing or not. Like, we're all connected. I think we just need to put down our phones, put down the apps, and just look at each other for a moment. Just look at each other and create memories and create just outfits with each other, lend things with each other, and just be ourselves versus just buying from these apps that are intellectualizing business transactions to make them feel more human. But as late stage capitalism develops, I think we're seeing a lot more tech advancements that are separating us versus connecting us, like AI and Sora. I don't know what's going on TikTok right now, but I don't even know what's real. It's really scary. It's really, really scary. And I just have not been on TikTok as much as I did in the past because the Sora brain rot is super, super concerning to me. And I think that if we have like more like IRL subcultures, it can allow us to find like-minded people. I know there's a like Pokemon club nearby where people just play Pokemon cards, and I think that's so wholesome. Like, it can be super simple, solutions. And there's research that actually says that subcultures typically emerge in urban areas and cities, and I'm lucky that I'm in Chicago, that I'm in a relatively big city near Chicago as well. So a lot of people are willing to embrace the subcultures that are emerging through, Pokemon and gaming and fashion and all those things. But I do want to know, where's all the grunge glam girls? But yeah, that also emerged through, Seattle, which is a very urban but like localized area. And I do want to say that I think that style can be fun. Style can be something that we constantly change. I think within the minimalist, sustainable fashion capsule closets and advice that we get, often enough we're kind of like pressured to wear very boring, minimal options. It's like the beige tops and the black shorts and matching everything super perfectly. But I think that just kind of kills the soul of self-expression. Like if you just wear black and white items, who did you dirty? Who killed your soul? But I would say that if you have the ability to really just do whatever you want in your style and wear that during the day, do it. I feel like that's a new luxury, because if you think about the 9-to-5 worker, they're not really wearing what they want to wear. They're wearing what the company wants them to wear. And it's the same with retail workers. They're wearing the uniform constantly, day in and day out. And they're forced to represent a business. And they're trapped in this like presentation of the self. So if you can wear the colors that you want to wear them. If you just want to wear black and white, for me that's a missed opportunity. But I mean, if that's what you want, I mean, go ahead and do it. But I don't agree. But yeah, there's so many options. There's so many boots, so many sweaters, so many shirts, so many things to be combined together. That's why I love style. A lot of times I thought, okay, I wanted to be a fashion stylist because I love styling things so much on myself. But then I realized people are very complicated. It's a whole art form to style others. And I would just say I'm a self-proclaimed stylist for myself. I only employ myself for myself. If you're a stylist, let me know in the comments how you do it, because people are going through a journey and you have to unpack so much thoughts and ideas and needs and desires. It's very overwhelming for me personally. I don't know if you guys relate, but as a working class person, like, I just really wish I had the time to just go through every single item in my closet and combine it endlessly and just play with my closet. Like, that's the ultimate fashion dream for me, just to be able to play with my closet. And I do want to say that there is, yes, like beauty and fun in fashion, but practicality. Like, we all know that. Like, we wear the jacket for warmth, we wear the pants for the protection of like whatever, but that doesn't mean it has to be like super pragmatic, like utilitarian. For example, grunge music was a combination of both utilitarian and aesthetic. So, for example, Kurt Cobain, who is a really renowned grunge singer, was married to Courtney Love, who is a fashion icon. She really did inspire grunge fashion for women. She routinely had slip dresses on. She had ripped fishnet tights on. Again, practical, but still rooted in her own style. And she wore Mary Janes, not because everyone else was wearing them, but because she really, really liked Mary Janes. She really did end up having this aura of disheveled, like broken, quote unquote broken glamour. And it just really resonated with a lot of people. Like, you could just tell it was different. It was herself, that she was comfortable and didn't really care if you liked it or not. There was other singers like Hole, who had red lipstick on, but it was often smeared. Her eyeliner was smudged. Her tiara was always like a bit skewed off to the side. And she just liked it. She was proud of it. She would say that her style was called Kinder Whore. I didn't look up what that means, but you can look it up. You can look it up. I'm scared to look it up. And I just love women who just mix things up, that you can tell are just themselves. They put like tweed together with different colors. They put girlish tops with masculine pants, like whatever it may be. They were just doing their own thing, and maybe it did follow a certain pattern. Like maybe they copied wearing baby doll dresses, maybe they also wore Peter Pan collars because that was kind of a thing then. Maybe they did wear a lot more flannel than people do currently right now. Maybe they did wear more boots, but you know, they were still being like themselves. They were still putting their own unique twist to it. I know like the wide leg jeans were also like a thing, and like the bell bottoms too, and how they like would mess up their tights on purpose. So like all those little things like just added a different level to who they were as people. And fabrics are moody. Like you wouldn't assume that it speaks so much about who you are as a person, but like every small detail can add up. And that's why I love fashion design so much. That's why I love going to fashion shows. It's not necessarily for like the designer that I support. It's more so like the practical, like little small details that I can see and really love. Like I wish I could just know what the collection looks like in advance to go there and just like absorb the collection, if that makes sense. I hate the idea that we're just going to fashion shows to blindly support a designer. Like I want to go there if I know that I'm gonna love the details. I'm gonna love the color, the collection, the ethos, not the brand, not the person. Love people, but I'm not gonna blindly support fashion if I don't know if I like it. And maybe that's the privilege that comes from social media. You get so many previews, you get so many like clues, but I don't know, so many designers are just doing like trendy items and like following this certain guideline each year that we just may end up seeing the same thing over and over again, but in different variations of it. And most of the fashion shows that we see are for luxury fashion designers. Like when's the last time that we went to a local fashion designers show? A lot of times local fashion designers don't have shows because they don't have the budget, the venue costs too much. So in the world of like alternative options, I would love to see more local fashion designers host fashion shows in their backyard or in their local town square, or have it be like made in the way that people can just enjoy the show for the details, not for necessarily the prestige or for the designer or for like the elitism that it perpetuates, because luxury fashion does, you know, perpetuate classism. But yeah, I think that also having like more secondhand items in fashion shows, it'd be super cool to see like chokers and rings and earrings that are from a different era but being combined to make it a modern thing. You know, like we sometimes maybe get stuck on the idea of innovation and improving certain things and like making it futuristic, but I feel like the ultimate vibe is really curated, well-made items that are super unique. But that's just me. I feel like that's the marker of like success and like we're doing something right in life. But we are so tech obsessed. Like if you go to Seattle too, it's so ironic because if you go to Seattle, it's like the tech hub right now, but it also has like the grunge lore that I'm talking about. So it's like anti-establishment ethos, but then we have these people that want to be innovators and creating the new world. And it's like heavily built on capitalism and the current systems that we're in, which is, you know, capitalism and exploitation and greed and war and stuff. So but yeah, I'm personally so excited to try to move to Seattle. My finances are not the best right now, but just know as a personal update, if you're still listening, that the weather is going to be so bad. But I love the gloomy weather. I love the dampness. I love a layering. I love how it can just escape into the music and just let that soothe you and what's going on outside in the world. And you can just make a lot of noise with music in midst of the frustration that we feel in life. So yeah, grunge aesthetic is something I'm forever going to be in love with, and I just wanted to share that. I know that this has been just like a very sentimental podcast, not super like intellectual or informative like it typically is, but you know, something so special as grunge needs to be spoken about. To wear something that was inspired by the 40s and then have something else be worn that is, you know, touching upon the 70s. Like, it just reminds us that we're never alone, that we can mix the rules up, that we can look tough but also really pretty at the same time if we want, and where just authenticity wasn't just a buzzword, but style is something that we are constantly curating. Like Nirvana's music of Nevermind, and how there was the release of Smells Like Teen Spirit. It's just a reminder that these things live on and will live on and will become like that anti-anthem for generations that are continuously bored with societal norms, and still it transforms and it becomes different things. Like girls like the Riot Girls, for example, took these grunge ideologies, these influences, and made it inclusive. They embedded like feminist ideals there. They had charity booths in their concerts. It inspired other bands to care about social issues. So this isn't just like a superficial thing that just ends. You know, it lives on. But a lot of people would disagree that grunge is important or relevant in a lot of scenes. For example, in the past, an English actress, Sophie Dale, said that grunge was like for antisocials and was just a premise for those that are going through an awkward stage of adolescence. And other people were saying that it was just random and they shouldn't belong in the fashion scenes. Marc Jacobs actually got really inspired by the grunge scene, made collections. Anna Sue also made collections about grunge. Christian Francis Roth also did collections, and these are like luxury fashion designers, and they were presented in major fashion scenes like 7th Avenue. But yeah, the critiques were so bad. Like, people were saying that one model was wearing a nose ring and we're just kind of disgusted about that. Like, there was so much uproar that someone was wearing a nose ring back then. And other people are like, why is this in shows? Like, isn't the whole idea to dress down? Like, why would you have someone look poor but put them in $400 dresses? So they were saying, like, no one who can honestly relate to the music labeled grunge is going to pay $400, which is a good point. Like, if you are into grunge glam, if you're into anti-establishment, if you're into using things until they die, would you support a $400 luxury fashion dress? But Marc Jacobs explained in an interview after all the backlash that if you look at Hollywood now, if you look at Julia Roberts or Juliette Lewis or Winona Ryder, maybe they look like they don't wash their hair and wear dresses from thrift shops. So all these purists think that they should be wearing couture dresses and feather boas and diamonds from Harry Winston. They don't understand that there's glamour there too. I also want to note that the grunge movement is also a reaction to glam metal, which is another genre that was popular back then. So glam is used for costumes, it's used for theatrics, versus grunge it was used more for musicians who were, you know, trying to use it for an anti-establishment, like anti-fashion ethos. So you would think that these two worlds wouldn't really mix together, but I feel like humans are always creative. They will always experiment. For example, a reporter for Knight Ridder newspaper wrote in 1992 that all fashion is loosening up, and a apparent rejection of the hard-edged styles and attitudes of the 80s. Grunge is a realization of that backlash at its most extreme and ugliest. Images, advertisements, and editorials began to try to show what is quote-unquote real. And late-stage fashion critic Bernardine Morris wrote in the New York Times that a typical outfit looks as if it were put together with eyes closed in a very dark room. And designer Jean Paul Gaultier, I don't know how to say his last name, said that grunge is nothing more than the way that we dress when we have no money. So very interesting points by a lot of major critiques and a lot of fashion players. Yet sadly, there was a decline of popularity in grunge music in the early 2010s, where there was more like pop music. And so, yeah, that was a transition over, sadly, that I'm still sad about, but also a marker of like the grunge movement or grunge music moving down into the abyss of being forgotten was Kurt Cobain's suicide in 1994. They said it was like the end of the grunge era, and a lot of people were saying this because he was like supposedly the spokesperson of the generation. And yeah, that was really sad. But there was other niches like soft grunge and pastel grunge in the 2010s and 2020s. I think that was because of Tumblr. Basically just reinterpreting like the original visual styles, but I feel like that was a bit disconnected with the core like anti-consumerist philosophy, and it just became about the aesthetic. But I feel like now it's coming more and more back in the mainstream media as the Y2K trends hit us from all corners, as Gen Z consumers are increasingly interested in the early 2000s, as we see more celebrities trying to embrace the grunge glam makeup and the vibes and the looks. And I do think it's a recession indicator as well, because the recession has hit us from the trenches. It has hit us from our current political scene. Normal people like us are scraping by, especially the younger generation that are heavily competing for jobs right now in an impossible job market. So there is limited finances that have forced us to be creative with what we own and what we wear and how we shop. So yeah, we still see some variations. We see it coming back, but I guess this is my call for you to dress how you want, dress to express your own unique sense of personality. We don't have to copy, like, quote unquote, the punk ethics, the punk ethos, the stereotypes. We don't have to follow that. Also, I must say that I have a feeling that grunge will become more popular, as a recent Blackpink member, her name is Jisoo, I believe is how you say it, posted some cool photos of her in grunge, makeup. So I have a feeling it's going to be a new beauty trend where punk-inspired aesthetics are being combined with, like, fresh and girly looks. But I do want to close off this podcast. Hopefully you enjoy it. This was more so for like sustainable fashion girlies who, care about glam and like subcultures and stuff like that. But I, as always, will heavily recommend that you use what you have in your closet to layer thrifted looks, to customize looks by just sewing with your machine, or you can do it hand sewing, and hopefully the past can be a North Star for us, of who we can become, of what we used to be as a society, to move away from our current society, to find ourselves once more. And we can move away a bit from this social media obsessed society. Can you imagine like going back to a time where we weren't like forced or encouraged to buy from brands, to be ourselves, to be sustainable, to prove a point, and where we were just who we are because of who we hung out with the music that we created, with the art that we made, where we just dressed up for ourselves without having to worry who we were going to impress online. So again, I want to envision the anti-establishment that we can create peacefully, obviously, and what that would mean and what that would look like. So yeah, how do we move away from overproduction? How do we move away from trends? How do we create the fashion industry that we really desire and want, that functions for people versus corporations and greed? So yeah, even when we have no money though, I think we should always be trying to reclaim our style, try to create ripples in culture, try to take cues from music, from art, and turn what could be seen as limitations instead into beautiful aesthetics. So yeah, thank you so much for listening. I know this podcast was a bit all over the place, but I just needed to get back into the flow of podcasting, flow into topics I care about and ethos that I find really meaningful. So hopefully you enjoyed the lore, the magic of grunge glam as a airplane flies over me. Oh, the timing, the tech people, they're following us. No, I'm kidding. I actually really like tech. But we don't need AI. We don't need them Sora videos. Anyways, I'll see you in the next podcast episode. Until next time, peace and love, Ellie. Bye.
My heart is broke.